Kara Tackett.
Present.
Thank you. John Beasley. Suzanne Scott.
I'm here.
Thank you. Steve Gonzalez.
I'm here.
Thank you. David Mock.
I'm here.
Thank you. Stephen Klaus.
I'm here.
Thank you. Marty Kelly.
Here.
Thank you. Natalie Johnson. Jamie McCool.
Here.
Thank you. Jared Bowen.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Robles.
Here.
And Susan Yablonsky. Okay. Thank you, Chair Garza. We do have, I apologize, we have a quorum for today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have a couple of items to discuss. Some will go pretty quick, and I think some will have some interesting discussion. The next couple of items, we previously or traditionally or typically we approve minutes for. I'm sorry, I'm jumping here. We want to allocate some time now for those who are who have some public comments. Let me just remind the group, there'll be two opportunities within this meeting to provide public comments, one at the beginning of this meeting and then one towards the end. So if there's anybody that wanted to provide us some comments, we will limit it to 3 minutes per person. And if we can start off with, I guess, item number 2, which is the public comments.
A Miss Elizabeth Levitz has requested to make a public comment. Ms. Levitz, if you would like to unmute yourself and make your comment now, please go ahead.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Levitz, and I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm with AECOM. I'm working with the GLO on the Combined River Basin Flood Study. And that flood study is for 25 counties impacted by Hurricane Harvey, known as the West Region. Several of the communities that are a part of this regional flood planning group are also included in West Region. So I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce myself and the GLO study and let the communities know that we're having a few virtual study kickoff information sessions. One will be this afternoon at 2 p.m. and then the next one is tomorrow at 10 a.m. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Certainly appreciate that good information. Thanks for sharing.
We have no further public comment.
Thank you, Caitlin. Again, for the group, let me just remind you, again, at the conclusion of this meeting, we will also have another comment period. So if you feel so inclined or if you feel we're missing something or we need to know something, please feel free to share with us your thoughts during this public comment. We'll move now into item number 3, approval of the minutes from November 2nd. Caitlin, do you have anything to say about those?
No, the reason why we're voting on this minutes from so long ago is because we had a posting timing issue last time. This time we've posted all of these minutes, so it is okay to go for approval from the meeting.
Can
I
I
review the minutes and move to approve?
Can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward.
These are the minutes from our last meeting, so we will just move forward with the same process for these.
I entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from February 9th, 2021 for the San Antonio Regional Flood Planning Group.
I'll make the motion. This is Suzanne.
Thank you, Suzanne. Can I get a second?
Dave seconds.
Any discussion, corrections, modifications to the minutes? If not so, then we will proceed. Agenda item number 5, communication from the Texas Water Development Board. Is there somebody planning from the board to address our committee?
Yes, it's Anita Machiavello. Can you guys hear me? I had to call in because for some reason GoToMeeting isn't allowing me to use my camera or audio on my laptop. But as long as you guys can hear me, I should be fine giving the update and doing the presentation later. So just for a few updates that I have for you guys, as you all know, we have executed the Regional Flood Planning Grant contracts with the sponsor for Region 12. That was done on March 31st. The Texas Water Development Board still needs to approve the executed. Oh, sorry guys. Okay, can you all hear me? One second.
We have a pretty bad echo.
Can you all hear me now? Okay, my troubleshooting on my laptop just started working. Okay, I was saying that Texas Water Development Board still needs to approve the executed subcontract between the sponsor and the technical consultant. We sent an email of kind of the high-level review we'll be doing. We sent that on April 2nd, but if you guys needed me to resend that, I could. I just wanted to thank anyone who provided comments on the Texas Water Development Board's technical guidelines for regional flood planning. Those were due April 1st, and we just want to say thank you if you submitted some. Also, I just wanted to let you guys know that you're my last region that hasn't selected their technical consultant yet. I understand you guys are having a couple meetings in the next 3 weeks, and I expect to attend all of them. And just lastly, remember to update your contact sheets whenever you're including new members into the group or liaisons. That's all I have.
Thank you so much. Certainly appreciate it. And yes, we are moving forward. I understand. I mean, I hope you understand. We had a couple of hiccups there on how we were going to be doing selection of our technical consultant, and I think we're going to be talking about that today. So I think you're well aware of our process. So getting into item number 6, just wanted to report to the entire group again. We are in the process of identifying a consultant. We did have some hiccups, which I believe we're going to be talking about that moving forward. But I think we've been able to come to a pretty good resolution, at least I feel, that will help us be able to select somebody and then really start moving forward. The other item that we'll also be talking about today, and you'll hear a little bit more about it, is the selection of of one of the vacancies that is really important, actually, and I felt it was really important to include in this study, in this work that we're doing, and that is the agricultural component. So we'll move forward with that. Caitlin, is there anything else that I'm missing?
I believe under agenda item 6 in your chair report, we were going to go under more detail about the RFQ process. If you would like Brian or I to go ahead and do that, we can do that now.
Yeah, why don't we you or Brian, if you guys can cover that.
Okay, absolutely. Brian, would you like to start, and I'll hop in with any extra details?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. As many of you know on this call, with doing the scoring process for the technical sub-consultant, if we were to use a group or subgroup that was appointed by the regional flood planning group, by you all, to conduct the scoring, then that would require that process to be posted as an open meeting, and then potentially submitting firms could attend that scoring process meeting, as well as interviews in the future. So one of the things that the River Authority, as the local sponsor for the group, has to do is sign an affidavit that we have stuck to our procurement processes, and our procurement processes internally do not contemplate conducting scoring, requests for qualification scoring in open meetings. And so our procurement staff had some concerns, our legal staff had some concerns, and we worked with Anita and James at the Water Development Board to learn what was going on across the state. And they had, they provided guidance on what other planning groups had been doing. And one of those solutions was for the River Authority to appoint the scoring team. And we did so. We did so with taking in some advice from the executive committee of the planning group. And we appointed a 5-member scoring team. They are currently in their process, and their scoring is due, I believe, this Thursday. And then Thursday afternoon, after the scores are the individual scores are tallied, they will be meeting to discuss what they saw within those qualifications and why they individually scored as they did. And so that meeting will be a closed meeting for the group, the scoring group. And from that meeting, there will be an opportunity for them to recommend to the full planning group whether interviews will be necessary, and what they would recommend, if that would be done by the scoring group themselves, or if that would be done in an open meeting of the full regional flood planning group. I know other groups across the state, other planning groups across the state have conducted interviews in an open session where all committee members were allowed to ask questions, and people that had been interested in the planning process had been in attendance. I know the Guadalupe River Basin did that recently. And that's actually a process that we've done for the Regional Water Planning Group, Regional, as well, which is a Water Development Board process too. So that, originally we thought we were going to use the executive committee to do the scoring, but that would have required an open meeting where any discussions of those scores would be available for all people to listen to, and have those crucial conversations about why people scored a particular way would be open to the public. And we did not feel that was in the best interest of the planning group or the River Authority as the local sponsor. So that's why we chose this particular method. And we're happy to take any questions, or Caitlin, and if I've missed anything in regards to that, or Neffy as well, you or the executive committee, everybody was
Brian,
part of that conversation.
If I could just add that when this item, and for the rest of those that were not in the executive this meeting, this item had a lot of discussion. We talked quite a bit about the processes, and certainly one of the items that I thought we could do is we could go into what's called executive session, such that it would, but unfortunately, the way the rules are written, there are very specific times when we could go into executive session. They're very clearly identified in the agreement between the sponsor and the Texas Water Development Board. So for that very reason, we couldn't call upon executive session to be in and to have this discussion in closed doors and have that opportunity to speak frankly and discuss the request for qualifications. I think the hybrid or the midway solution that we found, I think is going to serve the group, serve our purposes, because keep in mind, this group will provide a recommendation as to the final consultant, and then it'll be upon our group to be able to make the final decision and approval of that. So the final approval will still be our responsibility. It will be just a recommendation of that group. Is there any comments from the executive team that anything that stood out that you guys would like to share with the rest of the group? If
I
not,
think you did a really good job of summing it all up, Neffy. Thank you.
thank you, Debbie. So moving forward, the River Authority will be identifying, we'll be going and collecting a group to make a decision and then provide the executive team and then ultimately this group a recommendation on this consultant. And I want to make sure you understand that I, for one, want to make sure that the team that is selected is one that has not only the capability, but also the time. It's so important that this consultant has the appropriate time to do that. And I know everybody is committed to making sure that we are successful in this because this is going to lay out the plan for so many years for our region. So having said that, Caitlin, I think I've covered everything that we had discussed that I would cover. So
The only other thing that I had that you would like to add is your regional chair meeting, the calls that you've been having with all the other regional chairs.
Oh, right. I mentioned this at the executive and I didn't mention it to this one. So real appreciative of the board setting up meetings between all the chairs that we had, I won't say last month, or seems like it. It was very productive. It was really interesting because, from the different regions, we all had a chance to not only get to know each other, and it's interestingly enough, some of us, having worked in TFMA and APWA and the different organizations, actually I know several other chairmen throughout the state. And some of the discussion, interestingly enough, is very similar to what we're facing. While, certainly there are areas that have concerns with, coastal flooding and, rural urban challenges. Some of the challenges that we're facing in our region is very similar to what we see across the state. We had a long discussion at that meeting. How do we get the rural areas involved, and how do we really understand their needs? That was one of the overarching themes that, especially some of the larger communities, Harris County or Houston, Dallas, even El Paso, we struggled with how can we do that. And we talked about having someone appointed to that agricultural position. Many are kind of struggling with the same thing, but that was kind of an overarching challenge that that really resonated with me, is that we're all struggling with how do we make sure that the rural and urban have the resources and the tools to not only understand the challenges of flooding, understand the type of flooding, and then figure out solutions that can benefit both. That was kind of an overarching theme. And then from that, just the management and the working with the plan, and then getting the consultant involved was also kind of an interesting discussion amongst the group. We also talked about, as I mentioned to you right now, making sure that we have a consultant that is dedicated and has the appropriate time to get the work done. One of the comments that I heard during that meeting was we wanted to make sure that this consultant was able to provide us the kind of data and services so that we could be able to make the appropriate decisions. So overall, there was this real feel of excitement across the state to get this work done. and planning set, and really excited to move forward with that. So I wanted to share that with you, that we are, while some groups have really gone forth and started with a lot of the work, I did get a sense that a lot of them feel that there's still so much work to get done. And I, in my heart, I kind of felt, kind of at peace, recognizing that many of us here, not only on this call, but in our committee, we've been working together for so long. We know each other well. And we've come a long way. We've done a lot of things in this area. Again, it's just bringing in the rural, bringing in the suburban cities, bringing in the other, the many different counties, and having an understanding vision is what's kind of exciting now to see. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is that you'll notice now on our agenda, we will have, and we'll do it towards the end, a report from our liaison folks that appointed members that attend the different other regional meetings. And so we'll hear a little bit from them as they've been able to attend some of those meetings. So you'll see that on the agenda moving forward. So. Okay, then if we can move on to item number 7.
All right, Anita, I have given you presenting capabilities if you'd like to share this presentation.
Is it possible? Can you guys hear me? Is it
Yes.
possible for you to share it on your end?
Sure, I have the PDF. Let me pull that up.
Okay. Only because I'm having issues with GoToMeeting today. I apologize, everyone.
There you go. Just let me know when to switch.
Will do. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Anita Machiavello, and I work with the Texas Water Development Board. I will be giving you a presentation on the regional flood planning, pre-planning public meeting requirements. Next slide. So the pre-planning meeting background. Each regional flood planning group is required to have at least 2 pre-planning meetings at the beginning of each planning cycle. We, the Texas Water Development Board, are presenting this to provide you with more information about the regional flood planning process to inform the public input you will give to the regional flood planning groups. Next slide. Just to provide a little background about regional flood planning. Senate Bill 8 passed in 2019 and required bottom-up watershed-based regional flood planning with public input. The Texas Water Development Board designated flood planning regions, as shown in the map above, in April and designated the initial voting members of the groups in October. Regional flood planning group members are volunteers who represent various interest categories. Each regional flood planning group will have their own website, and you may contact them through this website to learn more about how to participate and how to stay informed. There will be many opportunities for public input in this process. There will be at least 2 of these pre-planning meetings, plus opportunity for public input at each regional flood planning group meeting, as well as on the draft regional flood plans. Next slide. Just to recap, here is an overall timeline for the first regional flood planning group planning cycle. Your regional flood planning group is currently working on contracts with the Texas Water Development Board and beginning to solicit technical consultants. Then they can begin the technical work on producing their regional flood plans, which is due January 2023. These pre-planning meetings are to solicit your feedback and suggestions at the beginning of this planning cycle. I will also note that all regional flood plans will be rolled into a statewide flood plan, which is due September 2024. Next slide. So what will your regional flood planning group have to do for the first regional flood plan? First, they'll need to gather information and see where we need more data about flood risk. They'll need to evaluate flood plan management practices, identify, evaluate, and recommend flood evaluation strategies and projects. Finally, the regional flood planning group will make recommendation about which of these evaluations, projects, and strategies should be included in their regional flood plan. I just want to note that this is not an exhaustive list of tasks to be accomplished, but just an overview. Next slide. Once the Regional Flood Planning Group identify flood risk in the region, they will gather ideas for flood mitigation that are appropriate for their region. These could be structural or non-structural solutions. The left picture is an example of a non-structural solution, using mangroves on the Texas coast to stabilize shorelines. On the right, the Galveston seawall is pictured as an example of a structural solution. Next slide. That brings us back to the purpose of this meeting, to get your input on the development of the group's regional flood plan. This is not the only opportunity for public involvement in the regional flood planning process. Public input is received at each of the regional flood planning group meetings, and the public will get to comment on the draft regional flood plan once it's developed. Next slide. I will now hand it back over to the chair. Please provide your input to the RFPG members. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. I really appreciate that. Any comments from the from our executive team or committee members, or any questions?
This is Doris. I haven't been to the website in a little while. So will all these presentations be loaded like they are for most stakeholder groups? They'll be available if you want to go back and look at any of these?
That is correct. I'll put this on our resource page.
Okay, I figured it was, but like I said, I hadn't been back to look at it in a while. Thanks.
Just a quick note, this isn't our only pre-planning meeting. The next meeting that we'll be having in May will also be a pre-planning meeting. So if you have any questions that you would like to bring to the next meeting, you can do so then.
Thank you, Anita, for the presentation. Hearing no questions or comments, we'll move on to agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 8 was an important one to me because I wanted to make sure that everybody attending this, especially the committee, had an opportunity to explore, and kind of your homework, or my homework is to take a look at some of the flood data that is available. So getting a good sense of that. So we'll turn over the time over to our sponsor to give a presentation on the data that's available, please.
We're going to use Aaron Cavazos. Aaron, I have given you presenting authority if you would like to pull up your presentation now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Aaron Cavazos. I'm a senior engineer at the San Antonio River Authority, and I manage the floodplain mapping and watershed master planning programs here. I have an overview of the kinds of hydrologic and hydraulic models available in the San Antonio River Basin, and then the status of modeling efforts in the Medina, Cibolo, Upper and Lower San Antonio watersheds, and some additional tools available. There are 3 basic categories of models available in the San Antonio River Basin. The base level engineering models are really kind of high level, computer produced. There's a little bit of engineer attention, but it's to cover large areas quickly with using regression equations or rain on grid flows. No structured data, like no bridges or culverts or anything. It's just the terrain data, and then they throw the water on the terrain and see where it goes. And this is a good, for example, and I'll get into the details, but we use this in Medina watershed where there are a lot of approximate studies that there were no models to support. And so this is a quick way, cost-efficient way to get models where models are needed. The second group are the detailed and limited detail studies. These use rainfall runoff models or gauge analysis for the flows, and then there are structure surveys, field measurements, or as-built for the bridges and culverts. And the difference between detailed and limited detailed really falls into whether there's good structure data or field measurements for structure data. And then the last model or set of models is the predictive flood. And I have some screenshots of what this looks like. But this is using gauge adjusted radar rainfall and National Weather Service predictions for future rainfall to produce flows. And then it's a grid-based model with structure rating curves, not actual geometry for the structures. Our floodplain mapping studies have some additional products, not just the floodplain maps themselves, but they produce depth and water surface elevation grids. So on the left, this is showing a 1% annual chance or 100-year flood depth, where you can click anywhere on the grid and get a depth, estimated depth of flooding. The other product, well, it's several products that show the percent chance of flooding. We're showing on the right here the 30-year percent chance of flooding. And you can see in these red areas, it's like 70% chance. It gets up to, I'd say, 94, 95% chance in some areas. And then that decreases as you get to the outer limits. We also have a percent chance of flooding every year, so an annual percent chance. And that is available anywhere we have detailed or limited detailed studies. So I'm going to go into the status of studies we are conducting in each watershed, the Huc 8 watersheds. In the Medina watershed, we completed studies in Bandera and Medina counties, and you can see that's this yellow. So it goes up into Kerr County and then some of Kendall County. And these we worked with the Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater District. Hi, Dave. And then Bandera, Medina counties and Castroville, and most of the areas, like I said, were base level engineering to get models to support the floodplain mapping where they didn't have models. And then these blue sections, we did detailed or limited detail studies. So we focused on the cities, Bandera and Castroville, and then below the dam. And the base level engineering studies, we worked after we completed the initial mapping, we worked with the Texas Water Development Board to make the water surface elevation grids and some other data available through the estimated BFE, that's base flood elevation viewer. And I reference a few websites in this presentation, but I can provide the links to those websites. It's a really easy, you zoom into your location and you click on it and you can get the data, or you can get the water surface elevation if you need to do like an elevation certificate. In Bexar County and along the border between Bexar and Medina counties, we're working on a few studies. The San Geronimo watershed was really segmented when they did the last mapping updates because it's on the border. And we'll see that in several cases, especially along the Cibolo, where the county boundary location caused studies to be segmented previously, and we're working on making those complete studies. So San Geronimo is underway, Leon, Medio, and then a few tributaries in the lower Medina are all in the hydraulic model development and getting close to mapping. We'll have mapping later this fall. We're conducting the hydrology all the way through the downstream end of the Medina, where it flows into the San Antonio River. And those hydraulic studies are initiating and will be available next year. in the Cibolo watershed, we started a number of years ago updating the hydrologic model, because if you stood on the Bexar County side of the Cibolo Creek, you were told you had some flow value, but then if you just crossed the Dry Creek into Comal County, there would be completely different value for your flows. And everyone was asking you, which one do we use to determine the water surface elevation? Which one is correct? And so we started just updating the model to include Atlas 14 precipitation and to make to provide consistent flow data regardless of which side of the creek you are on. So that hydrology is being shared with the communities right now, and we're getting a sense of kind of local input on the flows. And some places they're decreasing, and some places they're increasing, and the local input on that is going to be very critical for validation. We're also working on the hydraulic studies, the upper set of studies down through kind of the Selma area. Those have been drafted and they are addressing comments. We just have a few remaining comments to be addressed before those are complete. And then the other green ones in this midsection have been drafted and we've sent comments to the consultant, but we're gonna wrap those up after we finish the upper the models. So all of those should be ready this fall. And then we will be doing the lower hydraulics over the next year. In the upper San Antonio watershed, we completed a study in this Calaveras area, a mix of detailed, limited detail and BLE models. Most of the detailed studies were in China Grove. These studies are expected to be released preliminary, like the preliminary maps are expected in June. The rest of the watershed is the study is underway. We have a draft hydrology model for the Salado Creek watershed, and then we do have the draft Upper San Antonio. It's in review. The Salado has been reviewed and the comments are being addressed. The hydraulics are also underway, and both should be wrapped up this summer with draft floodplains in the fall. And finally, the lower San Antonio watershed. This is another one we've been working on for a while. The hydrology and hydraulics and floodplain mapping are all underway in the green areas. The blue hydraulic, the blue streams are where we're doing more detailed and limited detailed studies, and then we've done quite a bit of base level engineering to fill in the, again, the need for model back floodplains. The detailed and limited detailed studies are targeted at in the cities and then in kind of areas that are developing quickly. In Karnes County, we're coordinating closely with the county and their consultant to coordinate studies. A number of these blue lines are their studies that they're performing through their Flood Infrastructure Fund grant. So we're sharing our preliminary studies and building off each other in Karnes County. And then in Goliad County, we're filling in some of the gaps in our previous studies and updating everything with Atlas 14. And that study is being scoped with FEMA right now. So overall, this is just a big picture to put it all together, where we have studies completed, studies ongoing and wrapping up soon, studies that will be wrapping up over the next year, and studies that are initiating. I also want to note that the Texas Water Development Board is performing 2D base level engineering studies for the Cibolo, Upper San Antonio, and Lower San Antonio watersheds. And we're coordinating with them on those results, so we have a good comparison between their studies and our studies, and it's just another reference point for understanding flood risk in the river basin. In addition to the floodplain studies, the River Authority maintains predictive flood models. We've been converting this into a grid-based distributed model where we can apply just rain on grid, and it's a lot easier to visualize than our previous model platform. So at this time, we have the Upper Cibolo, Salado, Leon, Upper San Antonio, and Martinez Creeks fully operational. Medina River is being validated, and that just means we need it to rain some more so we can test it out. And then Calaveras and this little bit of Lower San Antonio are in development, but everything should be fully operational by the end of June. There is some expansion kind of being planned, but that's still just in a planning phase. So the details aren't really defined at this time. The predictive model output is, there's a common operating picture that can be used by the Emergency Operations Center and first responders to identify, this is an example of a gauge where there's a combination of gauge data from the gauge itself and then the model results. And when the prediction is working, there's a line in the middle that shows historic and then the model's predicted future. And the other thing it shows is the inundation, and this is an example on the right. But our engineer wanted me to make sure everyone understands that this is a simulation of a what if Harvey had arrived at San Antonio and what that rainfall would look like. This is not a real flood event. But it goes to show that this model is set up in a way that it's very easy to overlay what if scenario rainfall events to see what would happen in our watersheds, and then that can be used for tabletop exercises or other kinds of exercises to explore what might happen and what the best ways to respond to that would be. This information is not shared with the general public. We're leaving warnings and alerts based on rainfall predictions to come from the National Weather Service. But we do have some public information that is available real time, and that's this bearflood.org website that shows the status of low water crossings, and it allows for subscription at particular low water crossings. If, for example, if there's one that's on your commute that you cross regularly, you might want to subscribe to text alerts to know when it is overtopped and unsafe. The modeling work we do does not stop with floodplain mapping or inundation mapping. The models and flood risk data are used to identify areas of high flood risk and develop mitigation options. And this is through our watershed master plan project. So this is showing, we have a viewer where our watershed master plan data is shared, and this is showing one project plan view and the homes that would be removed from the floodplain as a result of that project. This is just one of the projects. There are about 125 in the viewer, and some of those are different options for the same high flood risk area. So it's not 125 that are necessarily recommended to do. If one falls off, there's another one to take its place. In some cases, of those 125 projects, around 25 are in progress or complete, and that's and a round number because they get broken into different phases and it gets difficult to keep track of the exact count. But not all of those are shown here. I just wanted to elaborate a bit on the quantities of project recommendations that come out of these master plans. And then those are scored, if they're in Bexar County, they're scored by the Watershed Technical Committee of the Bexar Regional Watershed Management Organization. And then they roll on to capital improvement project lists. There are a number of recommendations that will be updated over the coming year to incorporate the results of the updated floodplain mapping studies. So this is ongoing work and the never-ending maintenance to keep this current. These plans also include water quality and stream stability goals. So we're always looking for opportunities to recommend multi-purpose designs. The other kind of way these studies stay living is through collaboration with the private sector and with local community as they develop projects. The data that was used for the floodplain maps is made available through our D2MR website. Digital Data and Model Repository is what that stands for. And so then as private sector or communities do studies or projects, they're able to access those models, coordinate with other people doing studies in the same area, and then use the same models to submit their letters of map revision. We do perform the letter of map revision review on behalf of FEMA in Bexar, Wilson, Karnes, and Goliad counties, so that helps us maintain consistency. And then we have our regional modeling standards that also help maintain consistency across modeling throughout our jurisdiction. And then on the right is the floodplain viewer and flood risk map viewer. These are searchable by address. So you can type in your address in the flood, I'm getting gummed up, the risk map viewer. You can see the depth of flooding for the 100-year event and then the 30-year % chance of flooding. And then in the floodplain viewer, you just see the regulatory floodplain. As we complete our current floodplain studies, the data standards for the flood risk products are better and they align with the floodplain maps. So we're going to consolidate these two viewers and make it just one where you can see either the depth data or the regulatory floodplain or the % chance all in one viewer. So that summarizes kind of the regional data availability. We know there's local data and we do try to incorporate that in our studies, but wanted to highlight, that there are always studies going on at the local level that aren't captured in these regional roll-ups. So just be aware of that as you move forward, and I'm sure that the consultant will do a good job of capturing all of that in their work. But I just want to emphasize again the importance of having these current models and how those support mitigation efforts to have good mitigation project recommendations reflect the flood risk in the river basin. And if there are any questions.
Erin, this is Nephi. Thank you so much for that summary and presentation. And Caitlin, if there would be a way to please send those links to everybody in the call. I would challenge you to take a look at those maps, take a look at the websites, and really look at the information and try and understand areas of challenge throughout our watershed, not just in a particular. But Erin, I do have a couple of questions with regard to the data itself. Certainly there's some good flood data, flood information. But in addition to that, do you have available location, whether in GIS or in some other document, of a couple of things. One, critical infrastructure for our region, not just within San Antonio, but throughout the region. Do you have locations of that critical infrastructure? When I say critical infrastructure, I'm talking about hospitals, schools, municipal facilities, some of those things. Do you have that? And then second of all, do you have locations of green infrastructure throughout our watershed? In communicating and discussing with the committee members, green sustainable infrastructure has been an area of interest. And do you have some of those locations in your database?
We have some green infrastructure. We have a viewer that shares the green infrastructure data that we have. And then, so I can include that link as well to allow for any gaps. If you all have known data to share, you can see where there are gaps. And then on the critical infrastructure, that's not a data set we currently have, but it is something we are putting together as part of our watershed master plan update in the next couple of months.
I'd be curious to know if the Water Board or through Tenris or others may have some of that data sets. The other critical information that I think is important that we gather if we don't have that at this time, having experienced flood events and been in many of them, we always understand the criticalness of our transportation network. At our partners in TxDOT have a different standard of designing their infrastructure, and they have their reasons, and they can talk about that. So that's why our transportation network has also been critical when looking at our critical infrastructure. And I would draw the attention, especially those in Bexar County, how critical it is at our low water crossings or our low line areas, the areas where roads dip down. We unfortunately have too many of those within our area. I'd also like to see a database to identify all of those low water crossings for our basin. I think that'll be an interesting challenge to identify, recognizing that the majority of flood-related deaths in our state are transportation related, not so much people flooding in their homes, which of course that does happen, but so many are driving into these low-lying areas that cause some challenges.
Nephi, this is Suzanne. I just wanted to add a couple of things. Great
Sure.
presentation, Aaron. I saw Debbie Reed's comment in the chat about will the models be updated based on Atlas 14. Yes, all of the work that Aaron just mentioned, the reason that many of the updates are being done was driven by the Atlas 14 data that was received, and the River Authority is putting that into the models, and the city and the county and the River Authority all worked through a process of how exactly that Atlas 14 data was going to be used in the modeling process. So that is what now is being implemented through the work that the River Authority is doing. The other thing too is, I think Aaron made the point, but just to kind of put a finer point on it, the idea that the data is used, it's not, of course, it has to be used and developed for flood mapping perspectives, but because of the Bexar Regional Watershed Management Partnership that's been formed and has been around for a very long time in Bexar County, and we're using some of those same practices downstream. The information is dynamic and is used, as you saw, for information for first responders. It's being utilized by the city and the county and others as it relates to choosing capital improvements that they may use on their bond programs. They also, of course, we're using it to look at water quality, multi-benefit type projects. As development is occurring and you're using it for the base data for development, then as development is happening, that is being filtered back into the models and they're being updated. So this is a very dynamic process that over the years because we've worked together so well as all the governmental partners, it really allows for the River Authority's technical expertise to feed into other areas that the city and the county and other municipalities are using to make sure that there's some unified approach to how we address these things. So I think that, I mean, it's taken time to get here, but I think the important thing is that all these pieces kind of link together and do become very dynamic. I am glad that Aaron put the HALT system, the Bear Flood system slide, and that of course is another opportunity of partnership where Bexar County invested in the city of San Antonio in a network of those low water crossings, NEFI, and now all of that is something that is monitored remotely so that during flood events, people that are traveling in these areas where we do have lots of low water crossings at least will understand what their current path is, if it's flooded or not flooded, and trying to make sure that we can provide safe routes. So just wanted to put a note on the fact that this is all collaboration amongst all the partners that has been going on for quite some time and has yielded a really good interrelated approach to taking care of the flood data and using that data for decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I certainly appreciate you using the word collaboration because in fact, it truly has been. And let me remind you that this collaboration has not only been between the city, the county, and the River Authority. I have to make note that a lot of those models that are currently being used and developed are also updated by our partners in the private sector. As in the private sector, they're also looking to do improvements. They also do the updates to that model, and many of the models that have been identified have been updated, have been created, and even modified and corrected in some cases by our partners in the private sector who continue to work with that. So I think it's important that we recognize that it truly is a collaborative effort. And I think it has a lot to do with the simple fact that all the models are made available to the public and anyone and everyone who is interested in accessing the models and the supporting data to that models, including terrain data and all the backup information and reports that go along with those models are available. Aaron, one quick question. And I just for clarity's sake, and I think you mentioned it, and I just want to be clear, a lot of the detailed models that we saw on there, those blue lines, have you guys made a concerted effort to provide detailed models within all the communities? So for example, and just to pick on within Wilson County, Floresville, are the streams in and around Floresville, are those detailed studies, and have you, or you know, do the urban centers, do they have detailed information?
Yes, that's been a particular focus of our Lower San Antonio study, to fill in if there were any floodplain areas that did not have detailed studies during the 2010 DFIRM. We've gone through and created detailed studies in those areas. So all of the urban or like the cities within the city boundaries, when we finish this, they should have detailed studies.
Perfect, perfect. And one last question that I had noted here is you presented on the flood predictive models, which I think some of us here were pretty familiar with that. But I kind of wondered why that information was presented was it from the perspective just to let the group know that those things exist, or is it the River Authority's or expectation that we as a committee would use those models to help in our decision making? Is there a reason why though the predictive models were presented?
Our feeling is that their usefulness as for what if scenarios could be helpful at some point in the planning process.
And also too, I think it's just an example of how the data is being utilized all the way through the stream. Like you mentioned, how it's being used for development, which is very important. It's also being used for emergency responders to ensure that that information, although obviously it's not something that we make available to the public at large, it is very important that the data that we're using and we're capturing through all of this work is allowed to be used during major flood events for those what if scenarios to determine and give direction if places need to be evacuated or reverse 911 calls need to be done. I mean, those are obviously decisions that are made at the EOC, but at least the data can be there when it's needed.
Certainly, yeah. Thank you, Suzanne. I just wanted to make sure that we understood. Those are all the questions that I have. Let me turn it over to the committee members. If you have any questions about item number 8, about the information presented.
No, that was all good information. Thank you, Aaron.
Aaron is going to send me this presentation with all the links attached in the presentation, and I will post that on our website so everybody will be able to have access to it.
Okay, any other comment or question on or discussion on agenda item number 8? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 9, discussion and appropriate action regarding the vacant agricultural interest representation. Do we want to hand this off? Caitlin, are you guys, you going to handle this one?
Sure. So as the planning group knows, the executive committee has been in the process of trying to find a replacement or a representative for agricultural interests within the planning group, as we've had that vacant since its inception. Our executive committee has reviewed applicants and asked them questions similar to the process that everyone who is currently in the planning group had to go through with the Texas Water Development Board. The executive committee has made a decision on who they would like to recommend to the planning group, and Nephi or any other members of the executive committee, if you would like to make that recommendation now, we can go ahead and get a motion from the floor to approve that and then move forward from there.
From the executive team, is there anybody that wants to talk a little bit about the process that we went through?
I feel like I've been doing too much talking, so somebody else could talk.
You're not.
Did somebody else want to take that? Kara or someone, or no?
I mean, I can. We've gone back out now twice, really looking for candidates closely that align to the original description in the Water Development Board posting that had active engagement and representation on behalf of the agriculture, and really looking for folks in the downstream corridor, since really the urban area is well represented. So we have received several applicants, one that's withdrawn, one that maybe didn't quite meet, while great applicant and would have provided a lot of very good insight to the board, didn't necessarily meet the exact kind of language called out in the original posting from Water Development Board, but really represented it. But we really have settled kind of then, I think, on a final candidate. And, you know, and in fact, I think he is here today. I thought he saw him sign in and join the meeting. Nephi, if you want to introduce, or we'll wait until we make that formal selection. Caitlin, am I correct? Is Brian here? Looking for participants list.
Yes, he is here. So all we will need is to have a nomination from the floor and then move to approve that nomination. So anyone from the executive committee, you can make that recommendation, get that nomination from the floor, and then we can move forward with the approval process. And then Brian, if you would like to give any introduction or comments, I'm sure that would be appreciated.
I will recommend and move that we recommend Brian Yonta to fill the open agricultural seat on the board.
I second it. This is Debbie Reed.
With a motion to approve and a second, is there any other discussion from our committee? If not, let's we have to do a vote.
Do we want Brian to introduce himself before people vote, just to talk a little bit about his background in the ag, ag world, so to speak, so that people will know his background before they vote?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Welcome, sir.
Yes. Thank y'all. Y'all can hear me fine?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Brian Yonta. I'm originally from Karnes County. I work for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service in Goliad County. I've been in Goliad County for 21 years and 25 years total in the agency. But I was born and raised in Karnes County on a farm and ranch. And me and my wife actively participate in a cow-calf operation in Karnes and Goliad County currently, and was introduced to this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it, and learned a whole lot this morning already. And I'm on my phone today, but plan on going back to the computer and looking at the presentations that we had today. So can't answer any questions, but looking forward to serving y'all.
Mr. Yonta, I just want to say, first of all, welcome to our group, and I want to personally thank you for your interest in this. I think your background and your information is going to help the region tremendously, as well as the rest of the committees who are representing the different interest groups or the different groups here. So, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you might have, and we're excited for you to be a part of this group. Is there any questions that anybody from the committee has to Mr. Yonta? Hearing no questions, then I so move. Let's take a vote. All those in favor of appointing Mr. Yonta to the current vacant agricultural interest representation position, please indicate with a vote.
Dave, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone on the contrary? Please vote with a nay. Hearing none. Congratulations, Mr. Yonta.
Welcome, Brian.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
Hopefully
This
we'll
is
be.
Debbie Reed, and I'm really looking forward. Sorry, Neffy. I
No
just
problem.
wanted to welcome Brian and tell him how much I'm looking forward to have another natural resource person on the team.
Hopefully we can have a meeting soon in person. That would be real nice if we can soon. So with item number 9 complete, let's move on to item 10. As I mentioned to you during my short summary, I want to make sure that we include time for regional liaisons to give updates on the meetings that they've been attending. So I'll turn the time over to them. And I guess let's start off with Kara Tackett, who is one of the liaisons for Region 11, I think.
Hi, I'm Kara. I'm trying to get my camera on. I don't have a big formal update, but I'm actually Region 10, which is the lower Colorado Navidad River Basin, so Austin, basically. They have selected their consultant, and the prime consultant is Half Engineering, and so they are getting started. There was actually a meeting yesterday that I was unable to attend. It was kind of a moved one and conflicted with a standing Monday morning corporate meeting I have. But yesterday's meeting, one of the items that they got, and I know Elizabeth was here from AECOM, who's working on the GLO West study, but they actually got a presentation yesterday from GLO on that study. And so we can take a look at the information. As she mentioned, they'll be having some public meetings on behalf of GLO on that coming up this week, but they actually gave a presentation to their planning group yesterday. And so that's really kind of, they're getting going, consultants underway and moving forward. I think as we have more, they have conducted both of their public input meetings already. And in fact, yesterday was a third one, I believe, if I remember. So that's my report.
Kara, would you, that GLO presentation, would you recommend we request that presentation be given to our group?
I think, and Elizabeth may be able to answer, I think so. It's actually a larger area. Even it incorporates the San Antonio, Nueces, Lower Colorado, Lavaca, and Guadalupe, not our entire watersheds, but portions of it. And so, it's impacting 4 different regions. So for me, there's probably some real benefit in us understanding a little bit more about what that study is and how we make sure that we're coordinating and integrating. And so, I think that was a value to them and, be some good discussion. They gave and I've got a copy of the presentation, even though I wasn't able to attend yesterday's meeting, just went through an overview of that, the data collection that they're starting spring, where they're at. Their timing is they will be, they're not looking in completion until late 2023. And so, it is not going to be a study that's available for us, but certainly should be communication and coordination along the way. And that really applies to each of the watersheds that are neighboring us, since this one covers 4 different watersheds.
Thank you, Kara. I think we should request a presentation for our group. We put it on our list. Moving on to our second liaison, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you, Neffy. So I am the liaison for Region 11, which is the Guadalupe region. They did meet on the 13th of April. They had a great presentation from the city of San Marcos and some of the work that's being done there regarding some of their flood history and some of their work that they're looking at to address some of the historic flooding that's happened in that watershed, and some of the projects that they are looking at have implemented and want to implement moving forward. There's a pretty significant effort going on there. They have also went through the process of selecting their technical consultant. They received 5 proposals. They interviewed 4 of the 5. I think they did sort of a process whereby the GBRA and a smaller group did the ranking, and then they did do all of their interviews in a public meeting of all of the consultants and invited the entire planning group to participate, and many of them did. They selected Friesen Nichols, which was, it's a joint venture. There's Friesen Nichols. It also includes Blanton and Associates, H2O Partners, and a couple of others, engineering firm or other firms that I did not get to write down, but it's a group of several. They selected Friesen Nichols and that team because of their familiarity with the basin, that they really were very knowledgeable about Region 11 and focused specifically about that. So they felt like their knowledge of that basin was very good. They did say that it would take about 4 to 6 weeks in order for them to finalize the contract negotiations with Friesen Nichols. So they do have a meeting scheduled for May 5th and another one in June. They're trying to determine if they'll have both of those meetings or if they're going to wait until they get the contractor on board, depending on what the technical consultant can do in advance of the contract being initiated or executed. They are looking at having an in-person meeting, probably, I believe, by June, for their June meeting. So that seemed to be that they're trying to move forward with having in-person meetings. I don't know at this time, and they didn't really make it clear if those would be all in person or some sort of hybrid that would still allow for some people to join in remotely. It wasn't, they hadn't exactly worked that out. They are also working on having a presentation on green infrastructure by a group of folks that are putting a presentation together, but I believe that the presentation would be done by Texas Living Water. But specifically talking about the value of green infrastructure and how it can be utilized as they move forward, looking at some options for addressing flooding in the basin. So that's my report.
Thank you, Suzanne. Great information. And finally, from Region 13, our liaison, Dave.
Yes, I'm Dave Mark. Basically, Region 13 is going through the same process we were, getting organized, getting chairs, but they have chosen their technical consultant. It's HDR Engineering out of San Antonio. Now, their next meeting is going to be via Zoom on April the 26th at 1 p.m., and that's going to be a very important meeting. It's going to have Water Development Board updates, but it's going to have the technical consultant establishing the team roles, the RFP schedule, things like that. So this next meeting is going to be the one where they really start to kick it up. Also, the group's going to address vacancies in 2 categories: electric generating utilities and flood districts. So I believe they had to extend the deadline on that so that they can go back and try to get some more volunteers. Also, they're looking to potentially appoint liaisons to us and Region 15. So this next meeting, I think, is going to be very important, and I'll take a look at their presentations, and if they got some good ones, I'll recommend that we get them sent over to us. That's pretty much what I got.
Thank you, David. Dave, certainly appreciate that. And one of the things that Dave said that I think is real critical, and I think Kara also mentioned it, is if you hear of a presentation that you think would be beneficial to our group, please let us know so that we can add to that in moving forward with that. Thank you guys for those updates. Yes, Suzanne.
I do know that this green infrastructure presentation that's kind of being put together, I do think, and I don't know if Annalisa is still on the call or not, but maybe Debbie knows, that I do think they would like to present that presentation to our group at the appropriate time. I think they've been talking to the River Authority, the San Antonio River Authority, about it and trying to bring just sort of a primer, if you will, on green infrastructure and its benefits as a option moving forward to address flooding issues. Obviously, it's multi-benefit, as you know. It has flooding and water quality and other particularly could also be address erosion issues, other things too. So I think they just wanted to talk about that. So I don't know yet. I mean, the presentation that's going to Region 11 maybe could come here. I haven't seen it yet. It hasn't been done, but I do know that there are groups working kind of on a general presentation about green infrastructure.
Debbie, is that something you can help facilitate for us?
Yes, I can do that. And I've seen some preliminary information that they've put together, and it looks really comprehensive and applicable to all of the regions. But my understanding is they'll try to have some specifics for each region included.
Let's plan on that, Debbie. Let's see if we can get that scheduled, and by letting Caitlin know, so that we can get it on the schedule, so we can hear that presentation when it's ready and available.
Do you have any preference for an upcoming month meeting? Okay, I'll work on it.
Just whenever they're ready, whenever they feel they're ready to present, I think we can listen, and I think it'd be very helpful.
Okay, we'll do it.
Is there any questions from the committee on for either of the liaisons? If there isn't, let's move on to the next item, agenda item number 11, and that is again a public comment period. Again, requesting to please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and we'll open it up to those who are interested in speaking.
We have no request for public comment on our form. However, if someone would like to give a public comment and did not fill it out, please let us know right now. And you will have 3 minutes to give your comment. If not, we will move on.
Okay. Hearing none. So item number 12, the date and agenda item for the next meeting, tentatively scheduled for May 14th. Once again at 9 a.m. Any particular agenda items that anybody feels we need to include on this May 14th agenda?
The committee that is scoring the technical consultant will be able to provide their recommendation at this time for the planning group, and then the planning group can then decide to move forward with interviews or just accept the committee's recommendation.
Okay, that'll be a good item of discussion. Anything else that the group feels that needs to be included in the next meeting's agenda?
Neffy, it may be helpful, just as background, as we're getting, ourselves kind of knowledge. It could be helpful to understand the investments that have been made by the city and the county, and obviously other municipalities regarding flood infrastructure. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of investment over time, and that y'all continue to invest as it relates to infrastructure investment. I mean, we've sort of been talking about kind of all the element of this whole, kind of cyclical process that we're going through, and there's been a substantial amount of investment. I'm just thinking that maybe that would be a puzzle that could be added, a puzzle piece that could be added as background as to the investment that's been made, just as a thought.
It's not a bad idea. I think it'd be wise to hear from the different communities on what kind of investment we are doing. I agree, Suzanne. Dave Wegman is on the call, and he and the county have done significant investment in Bexar County, and certainly the city of San Antonio has done also. And I would also be interested to hear of some of the things that Jeff Carroll's on the call. Certainly Bernie has been doing some good work, and I know several other suburban cities have done some some good work. I don't know if the River Authority could also speak to some of the investments, some of the work that has been going down in the Southern Basin, in some of those counties, because I know there are some flood control infrastructure in the area in Karnes and some of those counties. Maybe we do put together a presentation to talk about that. We can include that. Is there any other items that you would like to hear from?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. You know, we got that flood warning system that just came online up in Bandera and the Medina Basin, and it's being replicated out in the Nueces Basin with the USGS. It's the first time they've done it in Texas. And I think it might be something in the future that we could get the GS to come in and maybe give a presentation on it, because it is a predictive model. And I think the group would be very interested in the work they did up there.
You know, Dave, I think that would be an excellent idea. I had heard about that. I certainly would like to see it, to see what kind of ideas and what kind of things they're doing. Is that something you can help facilitate, getting with them to see if they're available to present to us?
Oh, absolutely. I'll get with Doug Schliblin out of USGS in San Antonio. Me and him have given talks all over the state about it. We've gone up the Water Development Board, and that project was a Texas Water Development Board grant, and the project in the South was a grant of the Water Development Board. So they would be more than happy to, I can assure you, to come out and talk to you guys.
Yeah, let's do that. See if you can facilitate that, and if they're available on the 14th, great. If we'd have to wait to the next month, whenever they're available, if you could please help us do that.
Okay, I'll get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, I think that's going to pack our agenda there pretty good with items. Caitlin, is there anything else that I'm missing anything else that you need for agenda item number 12 for the next meeting?
No, we can go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Having said that, moving on to the next item, I think. And that brings us to item number 13. Any other comments? If there isn't any comments or anything else, let's I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
I
move
motion to. This is Debbie Reed.
Thank you, Debbie. A second.
Kara, a second.
Having heard the motion and a second, let's proceed. I thank you all once again for your time in making time in the morning to take care of this. So thank you all. We will catch you guys at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.